Tomb Raider. It's known for revolutionizing gaming back in the late 90s and introducing a generation of teenage boys to what puberty is. We've had movies, action figures, more games and some other forms of questionable media. But amongst all of that, one of the most overlooked gems is Tomb Raider Legend, released in 2006 to kick off the rebooted franchise. This game offered driving, shooting and a lot of really inefficient clothing for raiding tombs. It's completely unhinged in all the best ways, so hit that like button like Lara's spine just hit that forklift, and let's jump into it. We start with this action style opening, which is the epitome of the early 2000s. Following this, we're introduced to Lara Croft as a kid, and oh god, what is wrong with her face? Even her drawings are horrifying. She's going on an expedition with her mum when all of a sudden the private jet starts to crash, which is such a relatable problem. The mum straps Lara in and says close your eyes, but Lara, already showing signs of being a psychopath, comes back with this.
I don't want to close my eyes.
She's crazy. Following this, we jump forward in time to Lara doing her best impression of Tom Cruise from Mission Impossible 2. After a leap of faith which she barely makes, we then get to see her use the most ineffective way of climbing up a ledge. And don't worry, she does this in game too. It turns out we're making our way to a tomb, who would have guessed it. A little further on, we encounter our first enemy, who's walking about with a gun and talking on the phone, maybe to his wife or kids. And so naturally, she does the same thing and brutally murders him. We're then faced with a blocked pathway, and what looks like a very ancient and rare piece of history. So of course we destroy it to get through. Eventually we get to our first tomb, but to get inside we have to crush a few men with boulders. Inside the tomb we take out an endangered panther, because you can't be an archaeologist if there's nothing to find. Think smarter, not harder. But then we encounter the best part of the game, the unique death animations for if you fail a QuickTime event. Some of these are horrifically brutal, and don't worry, I made it my job to capture every single one of these, which you'll see throughout the entire video. Starting with these two, where she gets hit by a big metal blade, and oh look, it has a subscribe button on, I guess that means that you should hit it too. She also gets her legs cut off and falls to her death. After we make it out the other side of the tomb, we notice some enemies, and so at that moment Lara has a flashback, which is peak situational awareness. It shows her and her mum just after the plane crash inside a tomb, which seems like horrific parenting, but who am I to judge? Lara, being a stupid kid, decides to touch a delicate looking sword, which activates what looks like a Stargate portal. Lara's mum then begins to argue with the portal people and rips the sword out after they mention her daughter's name, but this only creates a big plume of smoke and causes the mum to disappear. Lara was so annoyed by her mum's presumed death that she ripped the page out of her book and threw away that horrific drawing. At least something good came from it. Coming out of the flashback, we're faced with what looks like an early 2000s pickup artist. I thought he was going to ask for Lara's number, but turns out he just wanted to know if we have a piece of the sword that Lara's mum broke. But because we don't, he negs us for a bit, lets us know our friend isn't dead who we thought was, and then orders his men to kill us. Of course that doesn't happen though, and I massacre all of his men, definitely not dying twice trying to make the jump from the bridge. We then find out we need to go to Peru, but not without going to Croft Manor first. This is where we meet Lara's crew. Zip, a dude who eats anabolic steroids for breakfast. Winston, he's just old. And this guy. I don't know his name, but he looks like an 80s double glazing salesman. We get to Peru and Lara is shocked to find that the people aren't welcoming to a British woman who carries a small arsenal around her waist. It probably didn't help that we started shooting that randomly placed dummy as well as into their houses, but that's besides the point. Then we meet up with Lara's friend, who insists that she doesn't want trouble. We immediately then run into trouble with an armed militia bursting in. Lara makes her way through the town, killing all of them indiscriminately. It's good to see this game has some inclusivity though, with a blind man apparently driving this truck directly into a power line. We really are the heroes of this story. Following this we get a bike section, which controls with all the finesse of a semi-truck. However, I did get to see Lara become the Terminator by taking a bike to the face like it's nothing, and flipping off a truck before killing the driver, who potentially had nothing to do with this entire situation. We turn up at this other closed off tomb before Lara has another flashback of her falling down a pit, which definitely isn't a sign of any possible undiagnosed mental disorder. In the flashback, we find our friend Sarah dead and proceed to drag a box over her body like the caring soul we are, before finding another one of her friends trapped behind these spikes and saying that something's coming. As soon as we get there though, Kent runs off because he thinks he hears his friend and is immediately killed by a monster, which serves him right because Kent was being an ungrateful fuck. Lara narrowly avoids the same fate after being chased by this monster, and then sees another one of her friends trapped behind another set of bars. We eventually meet her on the other side, but the monster is close on our tail. So Amanda grabs that forbidden stone, which gets rid of the monster but also causes the entire place to come down. As we're running out, Amanda gets blocked by rocks and Lara catches this gate with superhuman strength. Once again, the wonder of steroids. Unfortunately though, the place starts to fill up with water and we have to watch her friend drown. Lara's psychiatric state is making a lot more sense. Jump back to the present day and we go down into that same tomb to double check if she's actually dead, which feels like the type of thing you would have done immediately after. And shockingly, she's not. Continuing into the tomb, we then get our next batch of overly brutal death animations, which include Lara falling to her death, Lara falling to her death, and Lara falling to her death. Oh, so close. I then spend way too long on this puzzle, missing the obvious ball, which was the solution, but once that's done, I'm able to get one of them coveted sword fragments that pickup artist was telling us about. After this, it's off to Japan to find another fragment of the sword, and I'm really glad the designers chose to give Lara this tactical dress and animation. We then meet our friend who tells us to be careful because the people we're meeting are dangerous, and he's right, turns out we're facing a Yakuza death squad, but also twins. They must hire in bulk knowing how trigger happy Lara is. And oh look, they're all dead. dead. During all the commotion, Lara decided to make her dress even more tactical by ripping it in half. Our friend comes out and says we can find the crazy old dude in the building across the street, and then gives us a key card to get up on the roof. He mentions about being careful as there's construction up there, which makes me feel like he missed the multiple dead bodies he's surrounded by. Once on the roof, we see a conveniently placed bike which we go ahead and steal, using it to jump across to the other roof. Yep, that makes sense. We make it to the other side, where we skillfully climb our way to the other building. When we make it to the top of the building, we face some more Yakuza and their dogs, who apparently are bulletproof. Going through the building, we have to clear out an office, full of what I can only assume are devoted workers who are willing to die for their love of the job. Eventually though, we catch up to the old man, who seems to be using the artifact as some source of power, so we brutally murder him. Luckily, our friend from earlier comes to pick us up in a helicopter, where he shares a little too much information about what he's doing.
I am relieving myself too.
Yes, my friend, and so did many other men playing this game. We head to Ghana to find the pickup artist from earlier, as he has the second to last fragment we need of this sword. During this time, Lara takes up cliff jumping and narrowly avoids snapping our neck. We chase after the dude with the sword fragment, and I then find out 3 hours into the game that you can pick up other weapons. While in pursuit of him, we're almost crushed by a boulder, and Lara sounds a little too excited at that prospect.
I've missed Ghana.
Eventually though, after a lot more murder and killing of endangered species, we catch up and have another boss fight. We take this third sword piece and drive off to Kazakhstan to get hopefully the last sword piece. We're given the opportunity to parachute into a secret base, and naturally I don't pull the chute just to see what would happen. I love this game. Fighting through the base, we save these two guys. And what ammo is Lara shooting with that? Because she sent that guy flying. They tell us where to find the control center, and once we get there, we learn of a train heading deeper into the facility. So as fast as we can, we race over to it and find another conveniently placed bike, allowing us to chase it. It's good to see they're still employing the blind drivers from earlier, as he brutally kills his teammate, and then 2 others just randomly crash their car. We jump onto the train, narrowly missing decapitation, and for some reason there's just a propane tank randomly left on the track, which really feels like a HR nightmare for the secret Soviet base. On the upside, a crashing train means more beautiful death animations for Lara, such as forgetting to duck, missing her shot, and being brutally crushed to death by a train. Inside, we see more health and safety issues, bumping into Amanda, our not dead friend, who looks like she's contracted a nasty case of being a bitch because she thinks we didn't try to save her. She tries to kill us, and after some busy work of activating a Tesla coil and also dying inside one, we manage to catch up, where she shows us that she's made a new friend with the creepy monster from earlier, and also that the sword fragment isn't here but in sunny old England. It's polite enough to let us electrocute it, giving us time to escape through this claustrophobic tunnel. We then head to beautiful Cornwall. Yep, that's about right. During this cutscene, I noticed that Zip has barcodes tattooed onto him, which I guess means he's related to Agent 47. We make our way through a broken down King Arthur museum, and turns out it's built on an actual tomb, but this time we get some intense forklift gameplay, with the ability to move boxes and desecrate a burial site. In the process of this though, we destroy a wall and get to the actual tomb, but not without a brutal forklift death. Deeper in the tomb, we surf on a coffin so we can get to King Arthur's grave, who has the last piece of the sword, which turns out to be Excalibur. When leaving the tomb though, things get dialed up to 11 when we meet this thing. And yes, of course, we have more Lara death animations, which involve her being eaten over and over again. We have to save our 2 friends from this dude, which is when we find out Lara's a superhero, because she hits this man at Mach 5 into the van. To put the sword back together, we have to head to a tomb in Peru, and after killing a different endangered cat and dying in a plane multiple times, we finally get to wield Excalibur. And oh boy, it's worth it, because the final level, we head back to Bolivia and get to tear through everybody using the sword. As we put the sword in the stone, we realise the person talking to our mother at the beginning of the game was us, and so I guess Lara technically killed her mum. I called it from the start. She's crazy, but Amanda then says she's not dead, she's just in another realm. So to find out more, Lara uses the golden interrogation technique of making the person deaf by firing multiple rounds directly next to her ear. She proceeds to then knock her out as a thank you. Now this is usually the part where you'd expect me to say I went and saved her mum, but the game literally ends after this, followed up by its sequel Tomb Raider Underworld. So let me know if you want to see me play that, and subscribe because only 0.2% of you are. Also, YouTube thinks you'll like this video from me, so if you want, go watch that next.